Just closed on the 29th of August, 2023. Here's my disclaimer. Please read it. Please remember I can be completely wrong. And please remember for the next few weeks I have a lot of personal business. I will not be able to watch the market all day. I will not be able to spend as much time as I normally spend to do my analysis. I didn't get the normal pattern yesterday, and the plan was to watch what would happen at the open. We said either we gap up to a new relative high or move down sharply, and I said if we move down sharply, I had no support. Well, we clearly did not move down sharply, but I have to admit that even though we rallied from the open, which can be just as good as a gap, I didn't call for that. I called for a gap, so I have to count yesterday's call as a miss because I said we'd either gap and rally or drop, and there was no gap. We certainly rallied. Let's take a look at today's MEJT patterns. Early on, we got an optional target 4455.42. Now, that seems pretty far out of reach. It's 42 handles away, and it doesn't have to print. If it doesn't print tomorrow, we'll forget it, but I'll tell you, I did a computer analysis, and this pattern worked the next day 95% of the time. So it will fail 5% of the time, but those are the odds. In the afternoon, MEJT gave a buy signal and an ultimate buy signal. We got the minimum target immediately. We usually get more. There was an optional lower target, and when that printed, MEJT said it wouldn't stick. And that's all played out. So how does today's rally change the long-term picture? This was a chart we've shown before, and when we broke through this line earlier in the month, I said it wasn't a sustainable break, and at some point we should return to the line. Now we came close here. I said, I guess incorrectly, maybe that was enough. We finally got the required retrace here. So if we stop here, which certainly hasn't happened yet, we still had this top area called for by the DeMark signals. We had a drop. This break was called unsustainable, and we've had the required retrace. So for now, at least, we still have a break, the required retrace, and until we take this out, you can't be certain we're going to go higher. Well, here's the count I'm using. We had this impulsive wave. We had this wave down, which I'm counting as part of a corrective structure. Now, if this corrective structure were over, I would expect a 5-wave structure coming up without overlap. And there may be a way to count this structure that way, but I don't see it. If this isn't a 5-wave structure, we're still in this wave 2 or wave 4, however you want to count this. And at some point, there should be an end to the rally and then a drop. Doesn't make the count right, but that's what the count calls for. We went through the 38.2% retrace. Usually when you go through it like that, you'll hit the 61.8, and we're certainly awfully close. If this is blue A, we have an ABC for B, we have an ABC for B, and if you look at the ABC and wave what could be C, you'll see the height of A is exactly equal to the height of C. So we have an ABC pattern right at the end. Now that doesn't mean we have to end here, but if we do end here, there's a valid count pretty close to the required retrace or to the usual retrace. Doesn't mean you can't go slightly higher, but if this is the right count, we should drop pretty much from here. And I have to tell you, it's very suspicious when you have a straight line move up and then an upsloping handle. These don't have to break down. They can go up. But when this lower trend line breaks, the whole thing tends to get retraced back to the origin. So it's a very tenuous pattern. Of course, it hasn't broken lower yet. Let's take a look at this last wave. This may not be the only count, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that can be counted as an ending diagonal triangle. It doesn't mean we have to end right here. We could go a little bit higher and still be an E, and it doesn't even have to be the right count. But if it is the right count, you're going to retrace to the origin, which is here, which is pretty close to the optional MEJT target. So if we keep going up, we just chalk it up. But if we drop from here, your target's to retrace the whole thing, which is the MEJT target as well. Wednesday's pattern has the early high. We could still gap down. Typically, it's a bearish day with a low in the final hour. Should it be strong? Instead, we should see more strength in the days which follow. Today's rally was an obligatory return to the trend line shown in the earlier chart. Maintaining a breakthrough to trend line would call my entire wave count into question. It'd be a lot more satisfying if the rally were part of a wave B of some degree. And I just can't count the move from the low as a 5-wave structure, which is what one would expect if the last low was the end of the corrective wave. So I'm calling this still being in a corrective wave. NASDAQ McClellan oscillator is over its upper Bollinger Band, and the volatility index is at its lower band. If they reverse through the band, the sell signal is given. It hasn't happened yet, but if we start down tomorrow, it certainly could be given, which would be confirmation. There's a wave count compatible with a drop starting at or near the open. It's compatible. I can't say it's the only count. It doesn't have to be the right count, but if, that's an if, we start down, I believe it. Sentiment indicators remain bullish. I think we're going higher. And if we drop from here, that's an if, it should be a wave C, which would be followed by a huge rally if my count's right. So I still count this as part of a corrective wave. Today's high is a possible end of wave B. We won't know that until we see what happens early tomorrow. And if we do get a drop, I don't think we're going to fall forever because the sentiment indicators are too strong. We'll be looking, if that's right, we'll look for the end of this wave C followed by a continuation of the rally. So we have the count with the early high. This is a possible end or close to the end of this rally. We have an optional target 4455.42. We have a pattern which usually is a negative pattern. So we have a chance for a good retrace. But once we get that retrace, I can't say when it ends. But when it ends, I think we're off to the races for a huge rally. So once again, I'm going to look for what happens in the early trade. But I don't think the bottom's going to fall out here. I think there could be a pullback which investors could use to go long for a position trade. It's a pattern with the early high, and that's today's call.